Welcome to the Peanut Gallery, and my guest today is retired U.S. Air Force Colonel and astronaut, Mr. Kevin Ford. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Good morning, Chris. Happy to be with you this morning. How are you?
Good, good. Glad to see you. Let's go back a ways and just start from the beginning. What got you headed in the direction of the military?
Well, I really was just interested in flying initially. It wasn't so much about the military per se, but I did have an older brother who flew, David Ford, who lived in Hartford City. He was 11 years older than me, so an age difference. But took me flying once. My first flight in an airplane was from what used to be called Little Inman Field there in Hartford City, near Blackford High School. We took off from and did a little flight back to Indianapolis in a small plane, and I just got interested in flying. And I thought, at that age, you're kind of just trying to find a vector for your whole life, kind of. And I loved the flight so much, I decided to pursue aviation as a career. And then the military is a great place for an aviator to get a start. Really great equipment, of course, in the military, all the latest technology and everything. And thought I'd roll the dice and take my chances on being a military pilot first. And so that's how I got interested in being in the military. And I don't know if you've heard this story. I've told the story a few times, but when I was a junior in high school, I was looking at ROTC kind of. There's Air Force academies and there's officer training school, post college, and then there's this Reserve Officer Training Corps program. And I went into my guidance counselor and I said, hey, I'd like to look into academies and Reserve Officer Training Corps and so forth. And maybe I was wondering if you have an application for the Air Force. And he said, no, I don't have one in the office, but I'll get you one. And I kind of forgot about it. And about 6 weeks later, a guy called down to the guidance counselor's office and said, here's your Air Force application, and here's your Navy application, and here's your Army application. And I said, well, I don't need them all. I just want the Air Force one. You'll do them all. I said, yes, sir. You know who that guidance counselor was? A guy named Jim Landis.
Okay. I
guess you know who that is.
Yes, I know who
and
that is.
That is a true story. And I did all that. I did all three applications. Interestingly, I only was offered the Navy and the Air Force application, not the Army or the scholarship, I should say. And I had then the option of choosing a few schools, and I chose the Air Force ROTC and ended up going to Notre Dame for my university, and then started flying right after I finished university. So that had a big impact on my life. That somebody took the time and did what they could to help me out and set me on the right direction. There's probably that happened to me 100 times in life, but that's one of them.
So you ended up joining NASA in 2000. How did that all come about?
Well, I was a test pilot in the Air Force, first a fighter pilot, and then I was a test pilot for about 4 or 5 years. And all the test pilots around me I kept applying to go fly the space shuttle, So that really seemed like a big long shot to me. But since everybody else was doing applications, I decided, to give that a whirl too. And so I applied. First time I applied as a test pilot to be a space shuttle pilot with NASA was 1994. Actually, so I put an application in, and I interviewed with NASA down here. They flew me down here. It's a 1 week, kind of a 1 week stay where you do a lot of medical, like some orientation tours, of course, and an interview, a formal interview, with people who walked on the moon at that time. So it's a little bit intimidating. That's kind of the big interview of your life, at that point. But I wasn't selected for that class, and then I applied again for the 1996 class, and again for the 1998 class, and wasn't selected either of those times either. And as I was approaching 40 years old, I decided I'd apply one more time, and I did. And I guess all the good candidates had already been selected or something. No, it's really kind of the way the ball bounces, how much flying time you've had lately and your health at the time, and how many pilots they need from from the Air Force and Marines and Navy and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot that goes into the equation. So I was lucky enough to pick up a slot for the class of 2000. We called it. We were called the Bugs because back then the Y2K bug. You remember the computer glitch was all the things. So they called us the Bugs. And started in 2000 with a group of 17 people, and then we all flew in space ultimately. So it's really great.
Yes. Yeah. Sounds cool.
Uh-huh.
So what are you doing nowadays? Now that you're retired, you still have some affiliation with NASA.
Yeah, so I'm getting at the point in my life where athletics and stuff is like not my strong suit, right? I just turned 60. So, and I say that because in many ways, an operational career, like being an astronaut, flying in space in a new vehicle, or spending 6 months on a space station, it's pretty hard on you physically. It's a physical challenge and a mental challenge and a hardship for sure. So I'm not going to try to fly in space anymore, probably, unless it was a really short flight. But I'm working with the ISS program as an advisor, technical advisor for safety issues and things that impact operational readiness of the International Space Station. So I have a part-time job with them, and I'm also flying as an airline pilot for United Airlines. But we've been real quiet lately. So I haven't actually flown since March. I was flying out of Houston, flying the 767 mostly to South America, but occasionally London and Munich and so forth. But I was able to do that and have the part-time job at NASA at the same time. So it was a really sweet combination for me. But you know what's going on with the airlines at the moment. So we're eagerly anticipating a return to service and getting back to flying the American people around again.
And during your time, you were the director of operations in Star City, Russia for a year. What all did that entail when you did that?
Yeah, that was actually, believe it or not, kind of a coveted position. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that if it hadn't actually been for the Columbia accident. You remember Columbia, we lost in early 2003, and we had kind of a stand down in shuttle operations. I was a new space shuttle pilot at the time, and to take a year off and go to Russia wouldn't have been an option. But the circumstances of events there and so forth, and they said, it's going to be, you guys aren't going to fly for 5 years, so tell us kind of what you'd like to do for technical jobs and stuff like that. And I actually applied for this job in Russia. So we had crews over there training to fly up and down on Soyuz, and crews who needed to know things about the Russian part of the space station also went over there and trained. So at any given time, we had maybe 8-10 astronauts, sometimes as many as 20 total people when you included trainers and some administration and stuff like that over there occasionally to visit. So I kind of was the one who lived there and held down the camp and made sure people had the right visas, and there was a driver to pick them up at the airport. Everybody had a room, assigned, and just solved problems too. If training wasn't going well for an astronaut, I could go monitor the classes, or if an astronaut said, "Hey, you should come to this training with me. I kind of don't like the way it's conducted. Come take a look." So it's not just me complaining, right? So then I was just kind of the point man on the ground over there for the leadership, and it was excellent. I was able to take a Russian language training class almost every day too. Just because I was just over there with not much to do except focus on the job. So that was an excellent opportunity for me to learn Russian, and later was why I was able to fly on an expedition so quickly after my shuttle flight too. So it bore fruit, let's say.
Okay. Well, let's just go right into that. 2009 and 2012, you were in space, and I believe altogether I read that over 5,000 hours you spent in space during your career.
Probably, yeah. I've forgotten what the hour count was. The shuttle flight was a visit to the space station also. So we launched to do resupply. We took 15,000 pounds, right? That's a lot of that's a few pickup trucks, in the space shuttle. We took a lot of things up to resupply station, and we took up a crew member that would stay when we left. And Nicole Stott was a crew member that we dropped off, and we brought home a crew member, Tim Copra, who'd been there for for 3 or 4 months already. So we did a rotation and did some installation. We installed a thing about this bigger than a normal, even big refrigerator, ammonia tank we put on the outside of the space station that we took up in the space shuttle payload bay. So, but it was a visiting flight. I wasn't an ISS space station expert or anything like that at that time. Just I served as a shuttle pilot, but got up there and came down. And at the time I flew, that was 2009. Yeah, we launched August 28th and came home on 9/11. We were supposed to come home on the 10th of September, and we waved off a day for weather in Florida to try to make it back to Florida, but we still landed in California. So we had alternate places to go in the space shuttle. So, but yeah, we were up there, did the spacewalks, and really successful mission. We were docked about maybe 9 days total out of the 2 weeks so we were flying, and I thought at that point that would be my last flight, my only shuttle flight, because we were aware then that the shuttle program was going to come to an end. So I wasn't thinking that I'd get to fly in space again after that.
So on your second trip, was it similar?
But I did. So I came home and started kind of the what am I going to do next in life process. Started to think about being an airline pilot, or did I want to join a defense company or something like that, or just be take some kind of other NASA position. But I because my Russian was pretty good by then, I was a pilot in the class who had this kind of the skills to start training right away for an expedition. There were some things I hadn't done. Most of the guys who go up and stay 5 or 6 months, you have to be fully qualified in spacewalking, which is a few thousand hours of training. So that's like a year's work, right? It just on that subject area. But then you also have to learn the science and how the brains of the space station works, and it's just kind of a different operation from being a space station resident than being a space shuttle pilot. So the pilot in me enjoyed the piloting more, but the chance to go fly a long flight, I finally decided, if I've got the ticket, I should use this ticket. So I worked harder on my Russian and took some spacewalk, all the spacewalk training, and got qualified on that. And then they reassigned me shortly thereafter. I think it was early 2010 when they assigned me to a 2012 flight. So it's a couple years of prep. Everybody has to approve it. All the partners, the Japanese, Canadians, Europeans, and the Russians have to approve each astronaut on a case-by-case basis, based on their background and skills, and crew complement for those flying too. I was assigned to fly, for example, with 2 rookie cosmonauts who hadn't even been to space before. So it was going to be 2 cosmonauts, Oleg and Yevgeny. They're like brothers to me now. Really great guys. Oleg's even been to visit my house here in Houston. So, and most of my brothers and sisters haven't yet either. So, but he's a great guy. He's getting ready to fly again. But so I was assigned to fly with these 2 rookies, and for example, they wouldn't want a rookie U.S. astronaut to fly with 2 rookies. So the fact that I'd flown before gave them some comfort in assigning us as a crew of 3. So they're careful about the crew, what we call the crew complement, who's on each crew, and I picked up that flight, and we started training together almost immediately, doing simulators together when I was there. I would go for that training. I would go to Russia for about 3 to 4, sometimes as much as 6-week stays. And the DOR at the time who was there, Mark Vandehei, he did the job I did. He brought me over, gave me my favorite room, made sure the hot water worked and all that stuff, and did training. And I spent almost another year in Russia between the pre-flight and the post-flight and everything. So I've got a lot of time over there. I know my way around. I know how to get on the train and off the train, go where to go in the city and everything at this point now. Almost like a second home to me.
That's neat.
So, but that flight then was scheduled to be anywhere between 5 and 6 months at the time, and we were supposed to launch in September, but technical circumstances and so forth, we ended up launching October 21st, I believe it was, 2012. And then we stayed until March. So stayed over the holidays and the new year. And part of it, for 5 weeks, we were just a crew of 3 on board, but they do overlapping crews of 3 historically, so that we joined a crew that had already been there for some time, and they show you all the tricks of the trade and the ropes, and how really to do things easy, and where things are stored, and everything. So you learn from them. Then they go home, and then you become the kind of the senior crew on board. We were there 5 weeks, just the 3 of us, and then a new crew joined us just before Christmas time. So, and then we were a crew of 6 again. So when you're a small crew, you tend to have to just do a lot of maintenance things just to keep the space station healthy, and there's not as much time to do some science. So when you go from 3 to 6, those new 3 people, almost they're the excess capacity you need to be able to do a lot of good science for the researchers and everything. And believe me, there's hundreds at any particular time, and over the course of the station's life, which is almost 20 years now, we're coming up on 20 years of people on space station. So we've done thousands and thousands of experiments. And you talk to people on the ground, like at Ball State University or University of Portland or something like that, right when you're doing their experiment with them. And it's really cool to be able to do that and work with those researchers.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah. So
I know there's hundreds of movies out there about space, regardless of what they are. When you see them, how realistic is any of that?
So there's always things in them that is not realistic, unfortunately. But some of it's, the producers know, but they like, it's a movie, right? It needs to be a little bit exciting. But there are so many things in them that are rich in reality too, that it's a good trade-off. So I watch them. I really like The Martian, and I liked Gravity. And Gravity, I think, she visits the Chinese space station or something like that. Totally an impossible thing to do. To change orbits is not possible, but so some of the things weren't quite right, but the visuals were really good, and the spacecraft mock-ups were excellent, and so a lot of fun. And the situation, in The Martian was very interesting. So way he handled it, the psychology. So I think all astronauts enjoy watching the space movies, but we're not going to claim that they're too super realistic.
What was the most fun thing that you were able to do, and what was the hardest thing that you had to do during your time?
Well, to me, really the standout fun things were going up and coming down. That's very dynamic flight. Leaving a launch pad, hearing somebody silently count down for 10 seconds, knowing that you're really launching into space, is pretty amazing. And to have done it from Florida on the space shuttle, and then when you climb in the Soyuz in Russia, you're in Kazakhstan. You're all only speaking Russian. My checklist is in Russian, and you're like, how does the kid from Indiana find themselves in a rocket, in Kazakhstan? For real? Is this a dream? But super fun. I liked the autonomous flights going up and down, where you're just like when we were free flying in the shuttle, and when we were free flying in Soyuz too. Just being in you're in like a Volkswagen minibus or something, right? That's the size of the Soyuz, and just flying the 3 of you in space, and that's a pretty special thing. The come home in the shuttle was really cool to do, because you're really high and you're going 5 miles a second as the orbital speed. So you've got to slow down from 5 miles per second to approach speed for a runway and touchdown. And it takes about an hour to go from from orbit to the ground. But you drop down really low, and you're still going really fast down at about 400,000 feet. And you can see the thunderstorms going by and everything. And those are the most magical and fun things for me. The Soyuz, you can't really see out much. You can see the plasma out the window. when you're very first hitting the upper atmosphere, and then the plasma, the red fire outside goes away, and then you hit the aerodynamic G load where it's really pushing you down in your seat and everything. But that's actually, after being in space in 0G for 5 months, it's a struggle almost to get the air past your tongue. So that's actually work coming home. But and then you land under a parachute, out on the steppe of Kazakhstan. So it's a pretty hard thump down. So it's one of those things, after you do it, you go, why would anybody ever want to do that twice? For about an hour, you say that to yourself, and then you go, well, you know what? For 5 months in space, I guess maybe it's worth it. Now that I've stopped seeing stars, and I got my hearing back, and so. But those dynamic events were really fun. I didn't get to do a spacewalk, unfortunately, and most of my colleagues that did, they never let me hear the end of it. I was supposed to. All my equipment was up there, but the equipment, we were gonna receive some what they call radiator grapple bars from SpaceX. Was going to fly them up, and they came up too late for me to go out the door and put them on. So I didn't get to do that, but the many astronauts say that's their highlight, was going out and doing the spacewalk outside. So I just had to be content with looking out at a really big window a lot, and in my shirt sleeves, and enjoying the view. So the view is spectacular. Working is, very satisfying, but can be very difficult. So sometimes it's hard for people on the ground to understand what it's like to have to put bolts and screws together, and when you can't lay them on a table first, it can be very challenging. You end up putting a lot of them in your mouth, until you need it. I bet people on the ground do that too, but.
Well, let's talk about the 2007 Grand Prix in Houston. And it sounded like you had a pretty experience there as well.
I had a friend. He's from just north of the Indiana border. He's from Michigan originally, Drew Feustel, and he is a race car fan, so he had snagged that drive for himself. But then the office told him he couldn't do it because it was getting too close to a space flight. So they have some rules for us so that we don't hurt ourselves. That NASA invests a lot of money in us to get us ready for a launch date, and they don't really want us to go out and have a bicycle crash. So anyway, or a car spin out, right? So on a racetrack. So he said, "Hey, you want this drive and this ride in this?" It's essentially an Indy car. I think they were calling it kart maybe at the time. I'm not sure. The sponsors and stuff have changed a little bit, but as an IndyCar 2-seater, and the Indy Grand Prix came, and they do it on the southwest side of Houston. So I got to meet a guy, climb in his back seat, and it was more intense than I would ever imagine. I'm not sure I breathed. We took off. We came out. We had to do a 90-degree turn to get on the track, and between when we left the tent where they strapped us in and the turn, we went to 100 miles an hour back down again. It was just like full throttle or full brakes. And then he made the turn onto the track, and part of that circuit goes around the Astrodome. I don't know if you remember the Astrodome. Oops, I lost your phone.
Yep.
But and it does a full 180, and they go very fast, and it's the aerodynamics pins you down, to the track. And so you can do 2.5 Gs as you're making that turn. And life experience in cars tells you, you just spin out. You're going to leave the road. But no, we didn't leave the road. And I would never, if I was driving myself, I wouldn't have attempted to do what he did at all. So I didn't get to drive. I just rode. But it was fantastic. It was intense. And like I said, we were either a full throttle or full brakes. All the time, and a lot of lateral G's pushing me side to side, and really a fun experience to get to do that. I want to get on the Indy track someday too, of course. That's every Hoosier's dream, right?
Right.
So, but all I can do is watch.
Well, growing up and graduating from Blackford High School, did you ever picture yourself with this kind of career that you would be in space?
No, I didn't. I really hope to be able to fly. So I kind of, when I was in college even, I thought, I'm gonna try to fly fighter airplanes, but if I can't, I'll be just happy flying whatever. So something like flying in space, I knew the numbers, were astronomically against, being able to do something like that. And that's still true to this day. There's a you can put yourself in a position, to get an interview to do something like that, and but there are so few slots, and there's a lot of considerations they make when, selecting astronauts. And in many ways, your career just has to kind of have tumbled in by some luck and some random chance into the position to get selected and to go fly in space for sure. Every time we select the class, the first thing they tell you is, you guys really weren't the best that we interviewed. We interviewed a lot of people. We could easily send you guys out the door and take the other 17. They'd probably be better than you guys. So we interview all good people, and you should count your lucky stars that your application ended up on top. And congratulations, but don't think you're too big stuff. And it's really true, because like those times I told you, I mentioned I applied several times and didn't get hired. There are just circumstances where I was flying, what I was flying. They don't really want to hire two F-15 pilots from Edwards Air Force Base at the same time. They want to hire, maybe, okay, one F-15 pilot, but let's take, an oceanographer, let's take a Navy pilot, too. And because the cross-cultural element of having classmates, like we had a submarine guy in my class, right? And medical doctors, and being able to learn from them was very, very valuable. So you don't want to just take all the same kinds of people. And so sometimes the ball doesn't bounce in your favor, and you just got to keep trying. So persistence was important for me. By the way, now, like a lot of people think, if you applied a couple times, they'll look at you like, oh yeah, we already rejected him, we don't have to look at him again. NASA never did it that way. NASA always looked at it like, if you applied once and they said, man, this guy, this is maybe the best candidate we ever look at, but he's young, he'll play again. He's doing some really good work. This guy's fighting against Ebola or something. We need him to be doing that right now. In 2 years, we're going to have another class. And if he applies again, we can say, yeah, you were the best candidate last time. We just didn't take you because, we wanted to take this guy because he's 40, and you were 20, you're 29. So we just made our selections that way. And if people are persistent, then they actually admire that. Hey, you applied 2-3 times. Yeah, you must really want it. You really hang in there. You won't quit, right? So more likely. So they appreciate the persistence. More people should appreciate that, I think, too.
How much support and how important was the support you got from your family during all this? Obviously, this is not an easy process, easy task. So how important was the support you received?
Yeah, I mean, during my career, moving around and everything, you're taking, especially a military career, so you have to have kind of a family that likes that. And my kids were very resilient in moving schools and everything. So, but there's a lot of understanding that goes into to somebody trying to do something like that. And there are times when you can give to the family, and there are times when you're stealing from the family. There's no question about that. So very important part of that. And that's always appreciated from all of us, for sure. Yeah.
I know you've brought a lot of attention back to Blackford County, obviously, because of what you did. Your brother was a state senator and very well known. I got to know David very well and his family. And they've named a highway, I believe, after him in Blackford a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's unusual, I guess, to have two brothers from the same small community to make such a large impact.
I suppose so. I always admired David and what he was doing, and of course he was a big cheerleader for me too. So he was in the Indiana State Senate, and I think one time he had thing on his lawn that said Ford for ISS, Indiana State Senate or something. And I said, ISS, Ford for ISS. I can use that one too, International Space Station. But no, we always talked about our jobs, and of course I went down and visited at the State House and so forth. And he was. What was nice is when I come back and visit the community, but most people go, well, I knew your brother, and that believe it or not, that's the most important thing to me. That I love to be able to hear that and talk to people. I don't know why. He was the first child in the family, the oldest son, and I think he majored in political science and stuff like that. But he was also a pilot, and he wanted to be an ROTC, but he had cancer. He had Hodgkin's at a young age, and so was not able to go fly. So I think he has always enjoyed the fact that I could fly, and he came to Houston and Johnson Space Center and flew the T-38 simulator with me. He didn't survive to see me fly in space, unfortunately, which hurts a lot. But he was very very important to me. I don't know why that happened. That he had a big impact there. I'm so happy he did. And I don't know if I had the impact, but I did like the career I found myself into.
I think your family is very well respected in the community, and this has just been a great honor to have you on today and talk to you. And I appreciate you for giving me the time to do that and just tell people about what you've done in your life.
Yeah, I'm happy to see you again. And I'm in Houston still. I don't really have to stay in Houston for this advisory role. I can travel down here. We only have meetings occasionally, and so I'm toying around with the idea. Boy, I'll tell you, at the end of these Houston summers, we imagine being in Indiana, cool air and soft grass, and not having alligators outside the window. So, but Houston does have a lot to offer to me. I fly out of the airport here with United now, and Johnson Space Center is almost visible from here. I'll go in there a little bit this afternoon, sneak in and out in my mask. We're still kind of under a lockdown, but it's treated me well. But I do miss Indiana, and great talking to you. And it's always good to hear from people from the home state.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And for the Peanut Gallery, until next time, this is Chris Landis. I got a guy that'll edit this anyway, so I'll just tell him to make sure he does.